City Center Radio is episode 114, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, April 26th, 2023. Happy Wednesday to you all. Hope your week is going pretty well so far. I've had a nice little couple of days here. Can't complain. I recorded the last episode on Sunday during the day. That evening, I actually went out to the poorhouse. First time I've been to the poorhouse in a little bit, actually. I'm trying to remember last time I went out there, but it'd been some time. Few things have changed. They've updated some things. I thought it looked really nice. Was happy to be back there. Sunday night show, so a little quiet, as far as I'm sure you've been to shows there where it's all packed out both on the deck and inside, but a little bit quieter for a Sunday show, which actually worked out great. I went there to see a musician by the name of Laura Jane Grace. She is the lead singer of the band Against Me, which is kind of like a punk band that, they're a punk band that had some, modest hits in that scene. They were well known, and I always enjoyed. And she has gone on to, have some side projects and does some solo shows and things like that. Has also written a book, and been looking forward to seeing either the band or her solo for a while. So finally got that chance. It was her performing solo, all acoustic set. So it made it really cool to hear some of these songs in an acoustic setting. And she was, funny, joking around with the crowd, telling stories and, about the songs, or just little, in between songs, might just tell like a little anecdote or what have you. And it was just a lot of fun. A local band opened, but I got there late and did not catch them. But I did catch the second band, a group called Weekend Friends, and they were pretty good too. They were kind of in the punk vein, maybe a little bit more indie rock, but they were really good as well as a three-piece. But I enjoyed their songs as well. They were good. I say check them out as well. But yeah, it was fun. Just relaxing, for a Sunday night show was perfect, an acoustic show, but a little bit more energy than a normal acoustic, when you're downtown or something. And, a local musicians playing acoustic, kind of quiet, laid back, you're eating food or having drinks, so not really disturbing the whole scene for those who want to talk. This is a little bit louder. This is a concert. You're there specifically to see the musician, but yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was nice to get back to the poorhouse too. It's a fun place to see music, and it's a more intimate venue than a lot of the ones around town. You can get pretty close to the musician, and yeah, a night like that where I had space to kind of walk around and move. It was sometimes it get a little warm in there, so that was nice too. Definitely enjoyed it. So that was great. Also on Tuesday, I was lucky enough to meet someone I've chit-chatted with, through social media now for a while. Her name is Janie Haddad Tompkins, and she is an actor, writer, podcaster, does kind of a little bit of everything out in LA. She is from this area originally, and that's how we connected. She had followed me on, I think, Twitter, when for whatever reason, keeping up with what was going on in Charleston, and we exchanged a couple messages and whatnot, and got to know each other a little bit just through that. But also, she is married to comedian and actor Paul F. Tompkins, who I've been a fan of for a while, and so I was like, oh, this makes her even cooler. She was already really kind and funny, and plenty cool on her own. But it was cool that also she married someone that I'm a fan of as well, so that makes it really cool. So we had talked about maybe getting together at some point when she came back to visit family, and finally we were able to do that. So we grabbed coffee at Second State Coffee and just chit chatted for a little bit. It was a great conversation. Talked a little bit about my site and Holy City Center in general and some of the things I'm working on. She talked about some of the projects she was working on, and we talked about Charleston things. And yeah, it was great. So great to catch up with her. She's super kind and nice, and in her career, she's funny, and very talented. She was most recently on an episode of Night Court. If you don't remember, this was a show, I think, that started in the 80s and ran into like 92, something like that. They've rebooted it, pretty much an all new cast. There is at least one person from the original show who came back for this. I don't know if it's a reboot or what the official type of, when they bring back shows. I always forget if it's like reboot or what exactly they prefer it to be called. So you can check her out on that. She's been on other things throughout the years as well. But yeah, it was great to meet her and chit chat for a little bit. She also has a podcast with her husband Paul. It's play off of his name. It's Stay F Homekins, and they started it during the pandemic. And you don't need to know anything about either of their careers to enjoy it. They just kind of talk about what's going on in the world. Sometimes they'll talk about what's going on with their careers, meetings they've had, kind of behind the scenes stories about how maybe auditioning works, or some of the things that go on in those industries. And other than that, yeah, they're talking about the news of the day, shows they're watching. It feels like you're just sitting at the kitchen table with them as they're just chit chatting, and it's really good. I definitely recommend it now that the pandemic is, well, not over, but you know what I mean. They aren't posting as often as they used to, but that just means when they do, it's even better than it normally is, because they're condensing all the best content into one. But yeah, I recommend checking that out as well. So that's been going on with me. Not much else to chat about right now. So let's get into the stories. We've got plenty going on. First, update from the sports world. Our South Carolina Stingrays, after a tough game one, have evened the series at one game apiece as they beat the Florida Everblades on Monday night at the North Charleston Coliseum. After getting shut out in the first game, they repaid the favor and they beat Florida by a score of 4-0. Clay Stevenson led the way with a 27 save shutout, his fourth of the season. Incredible effort to get the Stingrays back in the series. Unfortunately, they now will be moving to Florida for the next, depends on who wins and whatnot, of course, because this is a series. But the next, I believe, 3 games, yes, the next 3 games are going to be in Florida. Game 3 is going to be Wednesday. Oh, so today, actually, April 26th. And that's going to be, of course, against Florida, the same team, at their arena called the Hertz Arena. Puck drop is set for 7:30, so you'll be able to keep up with it online and all that. I'll keep you posted on how they do. Hopefully, they'll win these 3 games and they'll take the series. But if they split these next 3 games in any way, whether it's win 2, lose 2, if one team doesn't win all 3 games, they will be coming back to the North Charleston Coliseum for game 6. And then there could also be a potential game 7. That'll also be at the Coliseum. So I'll be sure to keep you posted, because we'll want to cheer them on when they come back home. All right, updating that story about the Charleston County School Board that you probably remember. A Charleston County School Board member is threatening to file a lawsuit against his fellow school board members over actions taken during a special meeting that was called earlier this month. So you may remember the Charleston County Board of Trustees voted on April 4th to censure member Ed Kelly and removed him from leadership positions as well. This all took place during a pretty lengthy closed-door meeting. The agenda for that April 4th meeting stated that the board would receive legal advice, but it did not mention that board members would consider whether Kelly had violated board policy, which regulates board member conduct, after he attended a Moms for Liberty meeting and made comments about transgender teachers. In a previous school board meeting, you may remember a community activist by the name of Adrian Lott spoke during the public comment section and accused Kelly of telling the Moms for Liberty group he would bring a gun to the house of a transgender teacher if they were, his kid's teacher. Kelly, for his part, has denied those accusations. He then sent an email to his fellow board members on April 12th objecting to the specially called meeting and how his whole censuring was conducted. He said in a letter, quote, "Any discussion of my actions or comments should be conducted in accordance with the procedures outlined in the Freedom of Information Act," end quote. Kelly, who did not attend that special meeting, says the district's policy does not cover how a member is to be removed, nor how a policy violation is to be substantiated. He says in this case, Robert's Rules of Order applies, which lays out those rules. Just so you know, they lay out specific procedures for how trustees can be censured. And he is saying that those rules weren't applied appropriately. Among other issues, Kelly suggests he was not given notice of the specific policy violations the board was considering or allowed to publicly defend himself in accordance with those Roberts Rules of Order. He further alleged that the board violated the Freedom of Information Act, saying that while the board received legal advice from the district's lawyers, which was listed on the agenda, but then proceeded to discuss Kelly's punishment after lawyers had left the meeting, and that action was not in accordance with the law. He finished his letter with a list of 3 demands. He wants the board's actions taken against him on April 4th to be rescinded. He wants Robert's Rules of Order to be followed should the board renew any charges against him. So if they rescind it and then try to go back over it the quote unquote appropriate way, he wants to make sure that the appropriate rules of order are followed in that scenario. He also wants any meetings where the renewed charges would be considered to be called with ample time to prepare a defense for himself. He then closed out the letter by threatening legal action, saying, quote, "If the board refuses to take these actions, I will avail myself of any and all legal remedies available to me," end quote. So the drama continues. And when it first looked like nothing was going to happen to him after allegedly saying he would bring a gun to a transgender teacher's house if he found out that that teacher was one of his kids' teachers, it looked like nothing was going to happen since he denied that he had even said it. Seemed like, oh, board's just going to take his word for it. Then we find out he was censured and removed from committees. Should have known that that would not be the end of it. So we'll see if the board, you know, acquiesces to his demands, and then what they do from there. Do they then try to follow the rules of order that he says that they didn't follow? It's going to be really interesting to see where this goes, but for sure this is nowhere near done, and I will be sure to give you any updates on future podcasts. Do you guys remember Jack's Cafe that was at 41 George Street? You probably do, but for those who don't remember, this was a really popular diner on off of King Street, popular with really everyone, college kids, anyone who worked nearby, or anyone who lived in Charleston. Really, I mean, who doesn't love just like a old fashioned feeling diner? Well, you also may remember that it did close in 2020 after several decades of business. But the good news is it may be coming back. Indigo Road Hospitality Group, their founder, Steve Palmer, told Eater Carolinas recently that he wants to reopen the restaurant. His group bought the name and the space, and they plan on restoring it. So if you're not familiar with Steve Palmer or his hospitality group, they in Charleston, they run restaurants like Indaco, Maya, Oku, Oak Steakhouse, and many others. They also have other establishments throughout the Southeast, Atlanta, North Carolina, etc. Palmer stressed to Eater Carolinas that he and his group are just in the planning phase of reopening Jack's Cafe. So there's a lot to be worked out. There's no timeline or anything like that, but keep an eye out for updates and announcements. Just like everything else, I'll be sure to pass those along as well. Next up, some more news about a local business. Unfortunately, this one is not as exciting. This is not exciting at all. It's a bummer. Mr. K's Used Books in North Charleston, which has been open since 2011, will be closing in July when their lease is up, pending any unforeseen changes. Owner Mary DeBeer said a rate hike of $4,000 in monthly rent is just not going to be sustainable for her and her business. She said she doesn't have any plans to open a new store in the Charleston area. A lot of people, even if you haven't been in the store, may be familiar with it. There's a handful of bookstores here that are locally owned and operated, and this is one of them. But unfortunately, there are only a handful of months left before it will be closed for good. So if you're interested in visiting them until that July closure happens, they are over at 5070 International Boulevard in North Charleston. Their hours are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., or you can head in on Sundays from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Could we be seeing two political rivals come together for good? Well, they're at least going to talk, so that's a good sign. 6 months ago, they were fierce competitors in the race for South Carolina's 1st congressional district, but now Republican U.S. Representative Nancy Mace and Dr. Annie Andrews, a Democrat who ran against Mace in the most recent election, will sit down privately in Washington, D.C. to have a talk about gun violence prevention. The April 26th meeting, so it will be happening today when you are listening to this podcast. It is going to take place out of public view, but the meeting has been confirmed by both camps. The meeting comes just weeks after 5 people were injured during that April 7th mass shooting on the Isle of Palms. Um, Afterwards, Dr. Andrews publicly tweeted to Mace saying she would sincerely like to meet with her and stated how this is part of her expertise. She is a pediatrician, and unfortunately, she sees gunshot victims coming in that are, of course, being a pediatrician, that are under the age of 18. She also has done a lot of work in studying of this, of gun violence, and specifically as it involves children. So she's certainly someone that can provide some factual information to Representative Mace, as well as some things she believes would help prevent gun violence. Although Mace really hasn't said too much on this, Dr. Andrews, in previewing the policies on Twitter, she mentioned what she hopes to discuss. There were 3 topics in particular that she mentioned. This was in tweets that she posted on April 24th. And also, by the way, these are policies that Dr. Andrews was pushing during that 2022 congressional campaign. Those are background checks, secure storage laws, and what are called red flag laws that would temporarily take guns from people deemed to be dangerous. I've talked about these on this podcast as well. In the past, Mace has opposed red flag laws as a solution to addressing gun violence. Instead, she has advocated for things like a centralized criminal data system. Since there's multiple systems to search for criminal records, she wants it to be one central location, which would make it quicker and easier to look into someone, for a background check. She's also wanted to create an active shooter alert system. Look, gun violence this is an epidemic in this country. It's the number one killer of children. That's right, more than car accidents, more than any other kind of accident, more than cancer, more than anything else. Guns kill children, are the number one killer of children in our country. Um, to say nothing of what it's doing to adults as well. So centralizing the criminal data systems, I like that Mace wants to do that. That makes sense. Whatever makes it quicker and easier to find background check information on people looking to purchase guns. This active shooter alert system, again, okay, fine, kind of whatever on that one. That's nice that there'll be a way to alert people of a potential mass shooter in the area. Won't really do much prior to the shooting, as it seems most Republicans tend to want things that will, help after the shooting has already started. Although they do also, there are some things like they want, gun-proof doors and some other things like that, which ostensibly would you know help prior to a shooting happening. Uh, so hopefully she'll listen to some of Dr. Andrews' proposals, if not all of them. Hey, you get it. There's 2 different sides in this country. I mean, officially, obviously, the actual country is all over the place. We're not all Republicans or Democrats to the T. So yeah, there's going to be some politics involved, but hopefully, they will have a good meeting, and something good will come out of it. And if either of them shares those details after, I'll be sure to pass those along. Some sad news to share. Emily Meggett, who is known nationally as the Gullah matriarch of Edisto Island, died back on April 21st. She was 90 years old. She was the author of a New York Times best-selling cookbook called Gullah Geechee Home Cooking Recipes from the Matriarch of Edisto Island. She lived on that island, and she called it a piece of heaven her entire life. She was born Emily Hutchinson and was a descendant of the Gullah Geechee people. For those who are unaware, that's the group of enslaved Central and West Africans who were taken primarily from the rice-growing regions of West Africa, brought across the Atlantic to the coastal southeastern states, to where they were um, being used to cultivate rice, indigo, and Sea Island cotton on plantations. Of course, those were the big drivers of the economy at that time here in this state. She met her late husband, Jesse, on the island. They were married on July 28th, 1951. He passed December 2006. Prior to that, they spent time, they stayed on the island their entire life. And prior to marrying him, she grew up in a 2-room Edisto Island cabin that was previously the home of enslaved people. Laverne Meggett said her family frequented the cabin before it was relocated to Washington, D.C. to be displayed at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in 2017. For more info on Meggett, please read the Post and Courier article that is cited in the show notes. They give a much deeper background on her than I am able to do in this podcast. I tried to hit some of the highlights, just an incredible life. And I wish I had known more about her previous to her death. I had just really learned a decent amount about her several months back when she was being honored by the city of Charleston. I wish I had known about her longer. Pretty incredible life story, and was just someone who, you're proud to was part of your community here in the Charleston area. And I would imagine, she made a lot of people proud to be associated with her. And finally, let's end with some fun news. Always happy to share stuff like this. The movie theater chain Cinemark. I don't know how it's officially pronounced, but you know what I'm talking about. They will give families the opportunity to catch feature animated and kid-friendly movies for just $1.50 per ticket as part of their summer movie clubhouse program. Every Wednesday from June 21st through August 16th, moviegoers will be able to head to a participating theater, including the location in Summerville, for a one-time showing at 9:30 a.m. Some of the movies they plan on showing include Minions, The Rise of Gru, Sonic the Hedgehog, Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank, and Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. There are several others. That's just a sampling, so you have an idea of what sort of films will be shown. In addition to that discounted price, as part of the promotion, ticket holders can also get $1 off kids' snack packs and $1 off any size popcorn and drink combo that is available at the movie theater. There are theaters in Myrtle Beach and Bluffton who will also be offering this $1.50 ticket deal. But obviously, the Summerville location is the closest one for all of us here in the Charleston area. So that'll do it for this episode of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Sound System for producing this and every single episode, as well as Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in every show we put out. If you want to help out the podcast and Holy City Center in general, be sure to head to holycitycenter.com/shop, where you can buy some merchandise, or go to patreon.com/holycitycenter to sign up for one of those subscription tiers. Enjoy the rest of your week. The next time you will hear from me will be on Friday as we get ready for the weekend. I can't wait to talk to you all again. But until then, good night and good luck.